This item was a result of a code enforcement action, and tonight's request is a response by the project applicants and their agent, Sue Taylor Design, to the Planning Commission's June 21st, 2016 public hearing regarding the submittal of a revised project for commission consideration. The applicant and their agent did provide that information. It is submitted to you and provided as attachment A of your staff report. The proposed parking lot improvements involve a 2-foot-high landscape wall comprised of natural stone that would span the full length of the parking area, separating the parking lot from the existing city sidewalk along Main Street. A 3-inch metal rail would be mounted on top of the stone wall for ivy that would be trained to climb and then grow along the metal rail as well as the stone wall. Parking lot surfacing is proposed to be comprised of 2 inches of gravel. A gravel drainage swale to capture parking lot and slope runoff would be constructed along the south edge of the parking area at the base of the hill slope. Runoff would then be directed westerly to the existing asphalt driveway, where it would serve and would sheet flow to the street gutter. Runoff would then flow easterly within the gutter to the existing drainage inlet along the project's Main Street frontage. Vehicle access to the site is from the west via the adjoining C&H Motor Parts property, and a single vehicle width driveway aisle of variable width between 9¼ feet to 12 feet is shown on the site plan to serve the proposed parking lot. Per the applicant's submittal package, the applicant cites the existing site condition of a solid rock subsurface as the circumstance that makes it impractical and not economically feasible for the applicants to excavate and asphalt surface the parking lot to meet city parking lot requirements. This circumstance is the basis of the variance request before you tonight. Staff's analysis of the request included whether it conforms to and is consistent with city code requirements for parking lots, including access dimensions, space dimensions, surfacing, as well as design criteria that is found within the site plan review ordinance, the city's development guide, and also we evaluated it for the request for required findings for variance applications. The request does not meet asphalt surfacing as required under city code for parking lot uses. The parking lot space striping would not be expected to last long due to gravel would shift over time. Proposed parking spaces are shown angled at 60 degrees. The proposed aisle width does not meet minimum city standard for 60-degree angled parking. However, city parking regulations do allow an aisle width minimum of 12 feet for angled parking up to 40 degrees. Examples of adjacent and nearby parking areas at 630, 640, and 660 Main Street within the commercial zone have similar site characteristics with the project site, and these were provided in staff's report. These sites have been developed with parking areas with asphalt or in combination with concrete surfacing. In that project site circumstances are not unique to the project site. The mandatory finding cannot be made. The granting of a variance request to the surfacing of the proposed parking lot would grant a special privilege to the property owners. Therefore, staff is requesting that the variance be denied. Staff has conditioned the site plan review request to require asphalt surfacing or substitute paving materials as approved by the city engineer. The request shall also meet the minimum parking aisle width per city code for angled parking. The proposed landscape rock wall and rail would be a handsome addition to the site. It would provide visual interest as well as provide an attractive transition into the site from Main Street. The wall would also serve to partially screen parked vehicles on the site. These attributes meet or exceed general plan, city code, and development guide aesthetic criteria. However, the proposed parking lot design does not meet the minimum shading requirements under city code. No shading is provided for the westerly end of the parking area. To meet city code shade requirements, the west area of stall number 1 between the access driveway, again, that's on the C&H property, and stall number 1, there's approximately 140 square feet. This is adequate area for a location of a raised planter where growing material can be added and a large street tree could be placed. This would help minimize and maximize the shading potential for the site, and would be a valuable addition to the streetscape along Main Street. Staff has conditioned this request to require the planting of a large street tree consistent with the city's development guide master street tree and tree palette at this location. The proposed parking lot without city code requiring without regularly required surfacing, drainage, and landscaping components lacks design character and visual quality that would be consistent with general plan policies, as well as meeting the site plan review and development guide design criteria. Staff has conditioned the request to require street tree planting, as I mentioned, paving and drainage to meet city requirements, and these conditions would help meet the intent of the site plan review landscape and site treatment standards, would meet the purpose of the general plan land use section, and meet the goal and policies of the community design section of the general plan. The purpose is to serve and preserve and enhance the existing community character and sense of place by developing projects and programs that build upon positive design features. Staff has determined that this request as condition is categorically exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act. The city did receive one public comment that is part of the staff's report as attachment B, and that is an email from Mr. Steve Calfee. Staff recommends the commission make the findings in support of the conditional use permit and the site plan review as condition, then conditionally approve the project subject to those conditions, which are provided as attachment C. Staff is also requesting that you make findings to deny the variance request tonight and then deny said variance. Mr. Chairman, the applicant and their agent is in the audience this evening, and that concludes staff's report.
All right, thank you. Before we open the public hearing on this item, does the commission have any questions of staff? While you're thinking, I have a couple. If this parking lot is created the way it is, and it's approved and constructed as proposed, does the owner have the right to lease these spaces at some time in the future? Can they lease these parking spaces to others?
Yes, they could.
Interesting. Thank you. And then the other question is so, are any of these spaces proposed necessary for the adjacent business, the automotive parts store? Do they meet all on site their existing parking requirements?
The neighboring and adjacent auto parts store does have two parking areas in which that building and the parking requirements are provided. And it is staff's belief that there is adequate parking to serve that particular business on the C&H property.
All right, thank you. Any other questions of staff from the commission? Okay, we'll go ahead and open the public hearing on this item, and I see the owner and some representatives are in the room. I would like to invite you folks to go first.
Good evening. I'm Phil McCarthy. I'm representing, from a family perspective, Wilbur Howe and his sister Marilyn, my wife. And it seems that pretty obvious that this is resolved down to a simple matter of whether or not to pave with asphalt paving and landscape a particular site. And in making their determination, the planning staff has appropriately considered whether or not any special privilege is being granted to this property, and they point to 3 or 4 other locations in the vicinity that have been approved as they would suggest we improve this property. There are some key differences, and there also are, and I've pointed this out before and probably a little redundant saying this, but there certainly exists within the commercial zone several unpaved parking lots that have been in that status for quite some time, and presumably will remain in that status. And as a result, that suggests to us that there's at least an inconsistent application of the zoning requirements. Also, there are some significant differences between the parking lots referenced by the staff as meeting the requirements, the design requirements, and this particular parcel. Unlike the referenced parcels, the one in question, and I believe the staff has acknowledged this, does not meet the size, topographic, circulation, or access requirements to be used as either customer parking or public parking, although I just heard them say that we could lease these spaces out to others. I'd suggest that we want to be very careful about leasing them out, given the physical constraints on the property. Allowing others to use it in that fashion would probably not be the best idea. Other than the ancillary parking of delivery vehicles and some employee parking, the economic feasibility of doing this resolves down to the value to the business. The properties referenced by the staff provide customer parking that is not being sought here. There is an offset then in terms of value to the business itself. And the more important and overriding consideration in our view is the cost to make the improvements recommended by the staff. We've had professional expertise tell us and provide cost estimates for making the improvements suggested by staff, and including excavation of the solid rock substrate and the net result of a very few limited use parking spaces. It does not appear to us to be the kind of endeavor that we would normally choose to spend money on, particularly in the amounts quoted to us by professionals. Similarly, planting, which is one of the requirements of the staff, in this mostly impenetrable surface, despite the fact that you could build a raised planter, is going to pose a problem for any big tree without some significant additional excavation. And when the tree is fully grown, and perhaps even in its infancy, in the location suggested by the staff, there's a possibility that it will interfere with sight distances for vehicles leaving the store parking area and this delivery vehicle and employee parking area. As a consequence, we ask that you approve the proposed plan as submitted initially. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Anyone else?
Sue Rodman, resident of Placerville, and one of the customers of C&H. And to me, what the city is proposing to make this small business owner do is beyond the pale. To me, asphalt, as I understand it, and from working with engineers in my profession, is to prevent erosion, to take care of rutting, to provide adequate drainage. If you're looking at bedrock, you already have an impermeable surface. You don't need asphalt over the top of bedrock, Ask anybody who does the Rubicon Trail. When you get on the slick rock, there's no asphalt and no gravel and you don't need anything else. So why would the city want to excavate into bedrock to provide an impermeable surface when there's already an impermeable surface there? To me, that smacks of, have you ever gone and taken a look at this site? If the Planning Commission and the city planner have not actually been on the ground and actually looked at this, then this is a paper exercise. And it's an exercise to, what are you trying to do? Drive out our small businesses from Placerville? I mean, this is just, to me, this is insane. And to put a tree in that location, A, you don't have enough root space, you don't have enough root depth. All you're doing is putting in a tree to watch it die. And the sight distance is a problem. It's okay now. You can come out of the driveway, look both ways, and be able to get across. You're already looking at an intersection that's impacted by traffic already. So you do need the sight distance to be able to exit safely. And to put a tree there seems like that's just, that's laughable. And when you already got a tight place to get trucks and cars out of, the last thing you want to do is put in a planter that makes it even more difficult. So I think what has been proposed by CNH is a reasonable way to go. And I see quite a few parking lots in Placerville that are not paved. And as cited, the parking lots that are paved further up Main Street are larger. And they don't sit directly on the bedrock as this one does. So I would say this is, you should grant him the variance that they're asking for, because to make them go through the amount of pain it would take to do this wouldn't be worth it. It wouldn't be, if I were the business owner, I would not do this. I'd just close the parking lot first or pay the fine, because it's not worth what you're asking them to do.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Hi, Sue Taylor. I drew a little sketch. Can I bring that to you? Give it to them. Let me pass that around there. Sorry I didn't have time to do that before the meeting, but so I kind of offered to help Wilbur. I think he was into about the third meeting when we started this, and I was just thinking this would be a simple process. At that time, the Planning Commission had already set a batch of conditions to go ahead and move forward with pretty much what we're asking for now. And then at that meeting, I think we were surprised that it kind of all got thrown out based on not having a complete application. And so many other meetings kind of on different issues, and here we are. So I think basically we're hoping that you know, the Howes have agreed to put a nice landscaping wall there with some ivy running across it. It is on bedrock. There are policies in your city codes that allows, in fact, encourages for impermeable surfaces to be promoted. And this is a great place to do it because it is bedrock, and the water drains pretty naturally there, and there is drainage that's been there all along. So I would encourage you to approve this, but not have to do the paving due to your city code 10614 that I've included on the plan. The parking aisles is kind of an issue. I'm not sure what's being recommended to put there because most of the standards require a 17-foot backup space. The issue with this parking lot, it's not That it was compared to other properties, but this one has different conditions because what's always been told in the past, it didn't qualify for public parking. It doesn't have the proper circulation. It doesn't have the egress. It's not the right size to fit in a regulated parking space. And I don't know if these other parcels that were shown sit on pure bedrock. So I think there is a special condition in which you can give a variance on this. And I didn't see that in the staff's information, that there is justification for that variance. And then the tree, as was mentioned before, I don't know how you put a tree in bedrock. There is an enormous amount of trees on the site, and I would ask, so I'm kind of not agreeing with condition 7, 8, 9 is the tree shading, and then 10, I would not have, they shouldn't sign a landscape agreement if it includes a tree that they can't. I think it would block the egress if you could get a tree there, but I asked, how are you going to plant a tree? And it was suggested, ask the city, and they said to put it in a planter box. And I just think that would be a line of sight issue. So I hope that the applicant has the opportunity to address any issues that might come up during this hearing. Thank you.
Good evening, Commission. I have a question. I would assume that every private property parcel, regardless of zoning, commercial or residential, has the right to park X number of vehicles on it. So if this was an empty, vacant, commercially zoned lot, what number of vehicles could you legally park on that lot? What does city code have to say to that? I'd like you to grant the variance request, and it's not that you'd be granting special privileges, rather that you'd be acknowledging special circumstances and hardships for specific site constraints, namely the bedrock, the hillside. I'm not sure you could legally meet city requirements for stall width and ingress and egress with back of sidewalk to the face of the cliff. Condition number 9, I'd say that needs to go. The requirement of a tree next to the exiting driveway and the beginning of this lot. Like Sue said, it's solid bedrock. No tree is going to grow to maturity there. It will grow into the planter box, that will become root bound, and in a big storm, over it goes. Also, putting a tree there is a potential creation of a public safety hazard. A lot of big rigs trying to exit the business. They already have a problem with the building to their west for site visibility. You plant a tree to the immediate east so they can't see those vehicles coming. And with a big rig, you'd have to limb that tree up 10, 12 feet, whatever. So they're higher cabs. They'd have better line of sight. I think it's just, it's not needed. So please consider removing that. And please consider granting the variance request. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Good evening, Commissioners. Marion Washburn from Placerville. I would like to speak to the issue of design standards and why they're there. At the risk of sounding like the oldest person in the room, which I probably am at this point, but when these design standards started to occur, it was a result of public meetings and public input on a very large scale that had opinions on how the town looked, how they would like it to look and how they felt like it should look if it were to prosper overall over the years. And as kind of a side note, a similar argument took place. It was about sidewalks. In the historic discussions about should we have sidewalks, there were many, many people giving the same argument that I hear this evening is, well, other properties don't have sidewalks, so we shouldn't install any of them because others don't. Well, the point of the whole thing, of course, was once you start improving it, the point of that is to get more improvement so that you have a community that is more improved than not. So the design guidelines sort of fall in that same category, that when they were passed, there were many lots that looked like the dirt lot that's in question tonight. And what the citizens wanted was upgrades, cleanup, aesthetic improvements, and understanding that you don't do that all at once. You do that as properties change hands, as properties are improved, as time goes by. So the fact that there was little of that in place at the time, in fact, was an incentive to do more, not a reason to do nothing. So I implore you to keep the standards that the public has advocated. The other thing I would bring up is, as somebody who's tried to improve residential properties that are older from time to time, is there's a trust matter, I believe, with government. And if some people are allowed to have special privileges and other people in the same area are taken to task and made to do everything that the book requires, there's a huge distrust of the decision-making bodies. And as I look up and down the street, there's a number of people who have invested considerable sums of money and have improved the street enormously. I think we all can see the prosperity that's starting to occur because of that accumulation of improvements. But if I were a property owner and watched some property owners be let off the hook from the regulations while I invested a large amount of money in improving those properties, I would be very resentful. And I'm quite sure that other business owners will be resentful if you say, well, those people had to do it, but these people don't have to. So I would ask you to keep that in mind, because trust in government is a very big issue. So again, to summarize, it was the citizens themselves that passed, approved, discussed the design guidelines, and I would hope that you would uphold them. Thank you.
Good evening, Kirk Smith of Placerville. Isn't the reason our planning commission is made up of everyday folks like us the same as why we have in this country a right of trial by jury, so that we have people making decisions based on common sense, consistent with the values and standards of this community? And if you do that, you'll naturally ignore the arguments made by the city, because the rules are flexible. There's different ways they can be applied. There is, for example, a standard, as pointed out by the movement, where you have a need for unpaved parking lots in instances so you can absorb water. I would ask you to recall and incorporate reference the 3 photographs I presented previously of 3 properties, all taken on the same night, on a rainy night. One is the C&H Motor Parts lot. The other one is right across the street that all of you have been passing scores of times in the last year. And the third properties were right behind Reservoir Street, on Reservoir Street behind Main Street, all unpaved. And nobody's ever prosecuted those, no matter how many times they've been mentioned here. And you cannot say, well, this is complaint driven, because I also showed you a photograph previously of the 5.2 acres owned by Senator Briggs down by the county jail, with just the one side of a logging road. And this is a week after rain, a deep rut. So the photographs I've presented to you, starting with Exhibit A, are all taken by the developer for that property. You know how we sometimes see these video clips made by crooks that are dumb enough to record their own crimes? You're looking at
the violation of city ordinances because this is all property that's not covered. This road that you see off in the left of Exhibit A, this is the tire tracks of one side of it. And this was taken before the rainstorm started. So it's been worse that entire time. And the city does know about it. The complaint was filed last year. Nothing's been done. So to say that you want trust in government, great. Let them have whatever they want to have. Because that would give us trust for government. You cannot trust what the government's done in this instance. We've described before why this is inconsistent. And you've had the transcripts presented to you of Steve Calfee in this room on the last meeting before the election in 2014, single out that parking lot of all the properties in town. And as far as the three persons who have over various times come in here to speak against this group, CNH Motor Parts, they're all in the CCs of this letter. And two of the three received money from the city, including Steve Calfee, who was a contract employee at the time he made that presentation against two persons involved in a political plight. So if you, and did you see any of those three persons who were concerned about consistency with standard come before you when they had a vacant sign up there at the Jack Russell Brewery? Oh, but that's different property. That's owned by a city council member's family. So to argue that this is treated equally, or that somehow that you're letting these folks off the hook by not following these extraordinarily expensive mandates from the city, is just nonsense. Because if you follow what they're asking you to do, then you're going to be treating people unequally. Because this is not a complaint-driven system. This has been, we've heard various things. It's been turned over to a grand jury, been turned over to the prosecutor. In fact, what we find out, it's been on the desk of the same bureaucrat who's sitting over there, not today, had told you the city enforces the law regarding water runoff equally. The laws are there, and we enforce them equally. Well, why has it been on that person's desk for a year and nothing's been done about it? So to say that this parking lot that accommodates 7 cars that are not for the public but for employees is a problem, and then 5.2 acres that has these massive logging roads put on it that have been there for a year and nothing's been done to cover them up as the rest of us would have to do in construction, that doesn't show faith and trust in government. It shows the opposite. So I trust that you'll do what they've asked for. You're not giving them special favor. You're doing the opposite. They're only doing this because of the pressure put on them to make these requests in the first place. And apart from all the things that have been said before, what's this stuff about putting shade covering over it? That landscape you're looking at, while cut out of the hillside to accommodate a church more than 100 years ago, is the same as our ancestors saw it. There's copper up there, you can see it, and presumably gold because it's the same kind of placer rock. So that's an attractive view, and you're going to cover it up with a canopy of some sort, like the parking lots you have up at Marshall Hospital? That wouldn't make sense. It defies it. So when you look at Steve Calfee's letter, the last one, it's consistent with the things that have been done for 30 years. You know that's not true, based on this record. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Evelyn Veerkamp, Placerville. I would just like to round off on 2 comments which have been made. Sue Rodman spoke about the expense to owners and the unreasonableness of what you're asking for. Marion Washburn referenced trust in government. I think trust in government is a huge issue, but I look at it from a different perspective. Because as a somewhat passive member of the viewing audience who's been watching the city of Placerville for the last several years, it does seem that the law is applied unequally, or the regulations are applied unequally. And it's been very difficult to not at least entertain the notion that this complaint-driven proceeding emanates from a city's desire possibly to drive CNH out of business, because that is a prime property. It is a property which comes up for discussion every time the city talks about wanting to do something at this end of Main Street, whether it was the roundabout, whether it's the stoplights which are going to be put in. The city knows that the owners of that property have resisted their actions because of the city's impact, because of these measures' impact on that business. So I go back to what Sue Rodman was saying. Do you really want to drive small businessmen out of business? And in respect of what Marion Washburn was saying, I don't believe that the citizens of this city I don't believe that that's what the citizens of this city want. There has to be a balance between observing the regulations which are drawn up by you, not by God, but by you. So will you apply you have to achieve a balance between what is fair to all property owners and what is fair to specific property owners. And I really fear that what you're entertaining doing will really seriously impact CNH, and I cannot help but believe that there is an intention to do that. Not by yourselves, but there's a larger agenda than what perhaps we're seeing here. And that is to get rid of this nuisance up there that resists the city's efforts to impinge upon that property with various plans that they have for the future. Thank you.
Thank you. I thought I saw somebody else.
Good evening, Planning Commissioners. Kathy Lishman. I guess every time I come to a Planning Commission meeting, I can hear some conspiracy about me. Once it was about some plants. This time it's about a conspiracy which is totally ridiculous. I know, for instance, that Mr. Calfee had wanted to do something about this many, many years ago, and perhaps the city manager wouldn't let him do it. So there is no conspiracy going on. It's just totally ridiculous. The house was torn down in 2001, and if the owner had come forward with a parking lot at that point, the requirements might have been different, I don't know. But here we are 15 years later. The property is an eyesore, and it's substandard. I agree with the findings that the staff came up with. I think the idea about the tree in a raised planter needs to be looked at more. Look across the street at the cork oak that's been there for many, many years and how big it is in a raised planter. It's not like a little planter box. It's a raised planter. Other properties in the area probably have the same type of soil. And I would imagine that the parking lot that is on the property now also has the same type of soil, and a paved parking lot went in there. The bedrock is not just on that little piece of property. That property is over 100 feet long, and the other properties in the neighborhood are narrower. And so it's a huge eyesore in that corner. And I think I would ask you, as a planning commission, you don't make up the rules. The rules are there. It's your job to see that they're applied. I ask you to uphold the general plan and the design standards that are part of it, and don't approve a substandard parking lot. If the property sells and a new owner comes in, then they're stuck with it. So I ask you to pay close attention to what staff is recommending.
Thank you. Last call, anyone else? All right, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing. Oh, go ahead. He stood up just in time.
Good evening, Wilbur Howe.
When we tore the building down in 2001, it had been condemned by PG&E and about everybody else. And we were told by the city engineer, Jeff Krovich, at that time, that we were going to use it only for private parking of my vehicles, delivery vehicles, and yes, an employee once in a while, that it was too small and I could not pave it. I got a call from city manager and attorney at that time, John Driscoll, who complimented us on leaving the landscape and the bank without tearing it down, and thanked me for doing a good job. So what they're saying is, we were told, nothing in writing because we did everything by a handshake, that we could not pave that lot. Thank you.
Okay, we'll go ahead now and bring it back, close the public hearing, bring it back to the Planning Commission for discussion and possible action.
So I'm suddenly a little puzzled because we've been calling this a parking lot all the time, and it seems to me when you discuss the various angles of parking, the widths that are required to make it a parking lot per accepted standards, there's not enough room. So my question is, are we even talking, is this even a parking lot? Or is this just a poor little orphan parcel that can't be used as a parking lot a priori?
If I could tag in with you.
Yeah, please.
It occurred to me sitting here tonight that, this bucket is only a 5-gallon bucket, and we're trying to put 20 gallons of stuff in it. And the reason for my earlier question about the use of this lot was, it occurred to me that, well, you can't make this lot comply for 7 parking spaces and meet all the rules. You might be able to get 2 or 3. I emphasize 2 or 3, and the word might because I'm not up here designing it. But I think we're just trying to get too much out of this little tiny lot. It occurs to me that, I hate to hear myself saying this, but with a redesign effort, without so many spaces, there might be a way to do a couple of parallel parking spaces and make it work. I haven't been able to study it. I am an architect. I've designed lots of parking areas, but it just occurs to me that there's too many spaces. And then I have a question for staff. I didn't mean to cut you off here.
No, thank you very much.
Now I forgot my question. My question is since we're here because it was being used for parking, are we not? And that resulted in enforcement action.
Correct.
Okay, so I see too many spaces on this little tiny parcel. We've kind of been hit over the head about the requirements are unreasonable and why do we have them and that sort of thing. Well, I kind of agree with some of the speakers here tonight that we need to have the standards, and generally they work. It's not working here because we're trying to put too many spaces on this parcel. Maybe it's only 2 or 3 that you can do. Maybe it's only 2. I don't know. I'm just kind of throwing out the question, but we're trying to get somewhere where we're clearly not going to get. In my view. So.
If I may, Sue, could I correspond with you a second? Thank you. On your drawing, I do not see a depth of the parking spaces. Can you tell me what the depth of the parking spaces? Yeah.
I thought I made them at 18, but I don't want to, not looking at it, I thought those were 18 foot. Yeah. I grabbed all my folders except the one with the plan in it, of course. Hold on a minute.
Sure, well, perhaps Ms. Taylor can just reference the document that's on the back wall.
So my question is, if you drew these at standard depth of a parking space, what is that? And then the second item is, what's the depth of a parking space if it's for a compact car? Is there a difference? I don't have a scale with me tonight, or I'd check it myself, I'm sorry.
Well, I'm pretty sure I drew those at 18 feet deep, and that was to show you that they really can't comply. You have 11 feet left in that area, and,
Okay,
and the
18
requirements
foot.
are so.
Now, what is the depth of a compact space?
Oh, planning should know that one. It's either 16 feet. 19 feet. No, they're talking about compact. Andrew, what's a compact space? I've got them over here.
You need to direct the question to the chair, but yeah.
Okay, to staff, do we know what the depth of a
A compact stall?
compact, yeah?
Yeah, it's 7 by 17.
7 by 17. Okay, so my question is, in space 1 and 2, if we reduce those down to a compact car only, little sticker there, compact only, we gain, what, 2 feet? That makes the aisleway wide up to, well, right now, the narrowest portion is 9 foot 1/4 inch. So you're adding 2 foot to that, so you're at 11 foot, yeah, you'd be 11 foot 1/4 inch. So we're that close to 12 foot.
For a standard parking lot, there's so many more requirements that this spot really cannot accommodate. And I guess that's the frustration is historically they were permitted to use it for employee parking. You actually have to drive off that property to get out on the street. So there's circulation, there's a whole bunch of issues. So, putting on a decorative wall we thought would help satisfy those that are having a hard time looking at that space. And
Well, I think the issue for me is the width of the aisleway. Okay, and that's what I'm trying to solve in my thought process here, is that if we can make that wider in those, even the first 3 spaces, then we have solved part of the problem of does this really count as a parking lot? I'm not excited about a tree being put in there. To be quite honest, that'd be nice to have some type of planters, but I would not want to pull out on that street if there's a tree on one side and a building on the other. That
Right.
does not make sense to me. I will be against that. I love the idea of the wall. That I'm driving down the street, I see a wall, I see a little bit of greenery above the wall, I see a few cars behind it, and I'm gone.
And
Okay?
that's what you'll see.
That works for me, okay? I am not, I'm not a big fan of asphalt, okay? I can understand that if this was, parking lot A someplace else and there was plenty of room, and you didn't have the soil there. And on the other side of that, if I am not mistaken, the driveway on the C&H parking, or coming behind the building there, is asphalt,
Yes.
okay? So that was my
Okay.
concern.
Well, and there will be bedrock on it, and that's similar to what's been allowed across the street at the Chamber Building, and they lease that out with gravel on it. The difference with that space, it's the size, it can qualify for standard parking spaces. And they're able to do that, obviously, without drawing lines on it. So, we just hope that this was an improvement from what's there. It would make it more attractive and still stay within some safety issues of not, the tree to me is a hazard for egress. And I just think, I don't like asphalt either. It's hot. It creates a greenhouse gas effect, and you don't have a lot of earth left in that area. And I think, I don't understand why, because it's not harming anyone to leave the bedrock there with some base rock on it. And it actually, it helps with the cooling effect.
Thank you.
So I want to talk about definitions again. Okay? The reality is, as I understand it, is there is a requirement for the ingress and egress lane, 17 feet wide. Is that what I heard?
Yeah, it depends on the angle of the parking lot or parking stalls proposed.
Okay.
The city does allow, what is shown is 60-degree angled parking, but the city does have provisions for a less angled, more acute angled parking, which would reduce the aisle width. And in fact,
required
the
aisle
45-degree angled parking, the aisle width could be as little as 12 feet.
Okay.
Yeah.
So as a practical matter, there are a handful of scenarios of angle of parking vice the width of the required width. In each of those cases, we can treat the width, the required width, as the independent variable, right? And the parking spaces is what's left over. So, again, there may be some mathematical result that accommodates the dimensions of this parcel. I'm not going to call it a parking lot anymore. That accommodates this parcel to park, as has been mentioned before, 2, maybe 3 cars, maybe none. I don't know. But what troubles me is we've been off on this circuitous path of aesthetics and who's responsible for what. But I think we need to get back and define what's going to work, what can be painted with orange marking paint in the gravel to call parking, and call them parking spots. So I think we're missing the foundational piece of the discussion here. Until we know what it is we're being asked to approve, because at this point, a 7-space parking lot, that's not even an item for discussion anymore, based on what I've just heard. Thanks.
I have a quick question for staff. Based on the size of the parcel or the adjoining business or the existing parking, what is the percentage or ratio of compact versus standard spaces that we have to maintain, or is there one?
Well, there isn't a mandatory requirement that compact stalls be provided. That's the option of the developer or property owner. If they choose to include those, we allow, I believe the maximum is 25% of the overall parking could be at the compact dimension. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does.
So, was that it? That's it. Okay. It occurs to me that we're still all probably still struggling with the notion that, we've heard a lot of discussion about the rules are difficult and they shouldn't apply here, but they applied over there, et cetera, et cetera. It still, in my view, comes back to we basically are trying to put too much in this bucket. And once again, it's not our job to design up here, if I can remind everybody. Take the liberty of doing that. I would think that there is a way through this that would be amenable to everyone. If there's only 2 or 3 spaces, and maybe they're parallel, maybe they're 45 degrees, we could come to some reasonable safety kind of layout for this parcel. and it could be done and eliminate the grading, so you don't have to whack away at the hillside there. A lot of the other parcels have certainly spent a lot of time and effort whacking away at the hillside to make room for compliant parking spaces, but to have the required number of spaces on site. But this situation is different. There's not a required number of spaces for this lot. Unlike some projects I've worked on professionally at the other end of town, where you had to kind of whack away at the hillside because you had to make it big enough to meet the required number of parking stalls. This is not one of those situations. What we're trying to do is in my view, is figure out how to legally park a few cars on this kind of little orphan parcel, with all due respect to your property, sir. And we're just trying to put too many cars on there. And we're all talking about, oh, it's going to cost too money to whack away the bedrock. I would think that it seems reasonable to me, put fewer spaces on the lot, and I could probably approve that. Put fewer spaces on there, eliminate the grading, because then you don't have to mess with the hillside, and because you're not spending a bunch of money on grading, pave the darn thing. It's not that big a thing, in my view, and based on my professional experience. I don't want to use this as a bully pulpit, because that's not what it's for, but I think there is a solution. But it's not our job to come up with a solution. We respond to what's here. It's always a little tough as a city volunteer myself to sit here and hear the conspiracy theories, and people are pointing at us, and even if you don't mean us, it kind of feels like that. And I know it's a pretty safe bet. We've all been to the site. Everybody's trying to be responsible. But anyway, enough lecturing. I just think there's another way through this if it's not so many spaces. So I'll stop there and ask the...
Chair Wolf, can I interject? The staff report and the recommendation by staff does not specify a number of parking stalls. Staff felt, as I heard two of the members speak tonight, as to the limitations that this, I won't use the word parking lot, the proposed lot for parking of vehicles, there is some limitations there. As to the quantity of stalls, no, this particular use, the use requested for the site is the parking of cars. It is not, as Chair Wolf described, perhaps at another project in which he was the architect on, where he was trying to associate the number of stalls required based on the use and the size of the structure being proposed. Here we have a parking lot that, as I mentioned earlier, the question earlier about, is this parking required for I'm paraphrasing, for the adjacent parcel next door? Well, no, it is not. It is strictly for the benefit of the property owner to park cars that are used by my understanding, used by the auto parts business. So I think the staff report has enough, not ambiguity, but allowance in there to move forward with the approval, but that it's conditioned to require the applicant to meet our dimension standards as well as paving, if that helps.
One kind of note that I had on number 7, it says the request shall meet the paving requirements per city code or the use of substitute paving materials. The cost of asphalt or something similar was brought up. When we're talking about substitute paving materials, how much leeway do we have? I mean, is it a impervious material that we have to use? Is something on the other end, chip seal? What sort of
Well, I won't speak for the city engineer. She's not here, but those are something that the city could consider, whether or not that would meet her requirement. I don't know. A chip seal typically is kind of a temporary It's a temporary solution and not a permanent solution. You have to understand that this request would be a conditional use that would make this lot permanent as proposed in its basically current condition, with the exception of the addition of a rock wall. I'll stop there.
Okay, thank you.
Question for staff. Even if we were to vote to basically approve the project, move it forward, deny the variance because we're concerned about the parking, the paving. Maybe there's a future debate here about the tree. But if we approved it as submitted by staff, is this a true statement? They still could revise the number of spaces to meet the existing parking requirements in the zoning ordinance.
Parking requirements in the sense of material, surfacing, drainage,
And dimensions.
et cetera? Dimensions?
And dimensions.
Yes.
Because we're not, even though it's a site plan review, we're not buying this site plan with 7 spaces on it.
That's kind of what I'm hearing, yes.
So you'd have to, they've approved we can, build a parking lot here, but you still have to meet the rules in terms of the dimensions and whatever. And so you might get down to a handful of cars.
Correct.
Instead of 7. Okay, thank you. Anything else? All right, Sue, 3 minutes. 3 minutes. Now I have to do this to all the other items tonight, too.
The city has standards, and I actually drew these at 18 feet, trying to accommodate what is there and who's parking there. But in reality, if you go to a 60-degree angle, they go from 21 feet to 23 feet. So if you're saying that you're going to have to adhere to strict city standards, they're going to make this even more limited on what can happen here. So we never talked about the parking spaces in the past. I just feel like I'm not sure what we need to address when we come here, because I'm not sure what the topic's going to be. So it's more if we were going to have, we've never assumed that this could be a legal public parking space. And it's to let some employees park there. And so it's something that can't comply to physically. You're requiring something that may be impossible, you making his property useless. So
Okay, Sue, I gave you another bite at the apple. I think
Okay.
we're repeating ourselves. Thank you.
Okay, but I'm just saying that some of these, we're trying to be compliant, reaching out, something that's common sense and works with you. We're not demeaning this commission. We're the ones that are trying to come up with a solution that we can all work with. And according to the standards, these spaces would have to be a lot bigger than what I'm showing on that angle. So I did submit it earlier that was 45 degrees that had 5 spaces. Wilbur said that most of his employees are about 4 spaces. If we need to come back with something but I think there's even going to have to be a variance on the size of the parking space to move forward with this.
Okay, well, the varying parking space sizes isn't our purview tonight. Thank you.
But
Thank
you're
you.
asking him to require a condition of a city standard that may not be able to be adhered to.
Okay, I get it. Thank you.
Okay, so you're quite right to say, Sue, that this may not be a parking lot. So you and I are in violent agreement on that point. And with regard to, doing horse trading on the dimensions deviating from published standards, I'm completely at a loss to see what the get for the city and the citizens is by going through that process. And this is someone made the comment earlier about civil service conspiracies, and I'm always hugely flattered as a civil. May I continue to have the floor?
Hey,
Okay.
you had several bites at the apple, Sue. Please respect the process. Or we have to do this same thing on every project and let everybody interrupt whenever they want.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I have to admit, I mean, when people say that civil servants are capable generally of conspiracy, you haven't walked a mile in my shoes, and you know, as I like to say, not my circus, not my monkeys. So.
Where's the tree?
So I freely admit that from the outset of this project appearing here, lo these 6 months ago, 8 months ago, whatever. I was purely bumfuzzled about all of the process that's going on here. I mean, we talk about handshake deals, and well, this should be acceptable in this circumstance. I mean, I don't want to be rock hard and say this 1/8 of an inch is acceptable and this 1/16 is not. That's what I'm not getting at. But what the penny dropped for me tonight was, we haven't defined what it is we've been spending all this time talking about. We have not defined it. Is it a parking lot? The gentleman in the maroon shirt asked, what is the maximum permissible number of parking spots on a lot? And among the possible answers, given the dimensions of a certain parcel of property, that number could be 0. It's within the realm of possibility. But until we resolve all of this definitional stuff, I don't know what I'm approving or disapproving. You know, I don't know if am I approving 4 spaces at 49 degrees or 7 spaces at 62 degrees? And, thank you.
Just to try to add some clarity here, the way I'm reading it, and perhaps staff can weigh in if I've got this wrong. If we have a motion that includes the requirement to meet the city's existing parking requirement standards, it's incumbent on the applicant to come back with a plan that meets those standards, whether it's 0 spaces, 7 spaces, or something in between. So I don't think we're not fixing that. Am I correct? We're not fixing the number of spaces.
No, I think my staff report describes not a specificity of the number of stalls. It calls out the applicant's request, but it's formulated and conditioned as such that, provided that the applicant can meet the dimension and other standards that I've qualified and quantified in the document, then a parking lot would become a parking lot, meeting city standards. The number of stalls, yes, that may be not determined until a plan with the appropriate and required requirement for dimensions are put on a piece of paper.
Okay.
And submitted to the city for its approval.
Right. I guess, like I was saying earlier, you've got a bucket of some capacity, and in that bucket you throw a required access lane and a number of possible parking spaces, given the constraints presented by the size, shape of the parcel and the required lanes.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, I'm going to make a motion. I move to approve all of the findings and recommended approvals on page 8 and 9 of the staff report for this conditional use permit and site plan review. And the motion includes approval of the conditions of approval listed as attachment C of the staff report, except I believe it's item 9, the tree requirement. And the motion includes the disapproval of the variance request regarding surfacing.
Second.
Thank you. Discussion on the motion? I have some discussion on my own motion. How egotistical is that? I think it's regrettable that this this application has experienced such a tortured history when probably this could have been worked out a little easier earlier on. It's had delays, it's had issues with completeness of submittals, and persistent confusion is what was actually being proposed. And I think we saw some of that, experienced some of that here tonight. So I'm seeing this approval of this motion, the way it was written by the staff, as basically saying, okay, we've got to solve this, but it has to meet the standards. So rather than kicking it back and going around in circles again, it's, hey, here it is. It's approved as long as you meet the standards. If you can figure out some other way to park, to do the surfacing that the city engineer will accept, you've got that alternative. We don't have to sit here and try to design it in terms of the surfacing or the number of spaces. So you're not being denied the use of this property. We're not limiting business. We're not picking on the little sole individual business owner. We're just trying to meet the standards. I think the variance, to me, the application included a variance request seeking relief from the paving of the proposed lot. Well, it's only hard to pave because we're trying to get too many cars on there, and we're talking about all this grading. All right. Hey, that's right. And the public hearing is closed. This is the part where we get to discuss it and talk about it. So I think there are solutions that will work so that you can eventually have some parking there. Operative word, some. To me, it hasn't included any reasonable arguments to approve the variance request in contradiction to the city ordinance, because I've seen so many other businesses in town do it and figure it out. It has to, it takes a little give and take and some creative designing. The aisle width is something you can't get around. Having a 9-foot aisle on this plan is completely impractical, and it would be unsafe even as submitted. And we've kind of been hit over the head about how dare we try to enforce safety standards. I think that aisle width is very important. So I think that's enough. I just think that we can move this, that the owner, as horrible as it may sound, you can still move forward and get this resolved. We're not kicking you around to go around and around and around and keep coming back with the site plans. So that's where I'm at. All right, I'll call the question. Let's take a roll call vote, please.
Chair Wolf,
Aye.
Vice Chair Roby,
Aye.
Member List,
No.
Member Lowry.
Aye.
Thank you. All
Chair,
right,
Chair Wolf, before we go into
you wanna
the
do
next
the- yeah.
item, I want to remind the public as well as the applicant, if they're still here, that they do have the ability to appeal the decision tonight or any condition that you approve tonight. So that is under their purview. They would need to submit that request for an appeal. It would go to City Council, and they must do so within 10 calendar days of tonight's action.
Thank you. All right, I think we need to take a 5-minute break. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I disagree on the parking service. I do not like asphalt.
I'm carrying baggage. John Osbacher spent $45,000 whacking away at this damn hill to have enough parking. If With much excitement, we're moving on to item 5.2, which is a site plan review for 2920 and 2922 Bedford Avenue, which is basically includes alterations to a couple of existing residential buildings. And we'll start with the staff report, please.
This project is located within what's called the Bedford Avenue Clay Street Residential Historic District. The site contains 3 structures with addresses of 2920, 2922, and 2924 Bedford Avenue. There's a common driveway that serves all 3 structures on the site, and that accesses Bedford Avenue. The main residence of the site, which is 2922, is the building closest to Bedford Avenue. Its age is unknown. The residence is 1 level, has 3 bedroom and 2 baths, and it has a simple end gable, roof gable. There's a front porch with porch posts and railing, which extends across the full width of the house. 2920 Bedford consists of a garage and a 2-bedroom and 1-bath apartment above that garage. This structure dates back to 1953, and the city has a permit for its construction. This structure is located to the rear of the property, approximately 1/4 acre in size is the size of the parcel. This structure too has a simple gable roof. The third structure on the site is 2924 Bedford Avenue. It's located at the southern property boundary. It consists of 2 units with 1 bedroom and 1 bath each. This structure was built with a construction permit issued by the city in 1951. 2924 is not the subject to tonight's request, just point of notification for you. None of the structures that I've mentioned and described and located on the site are listed on the city's historic resource inventory or the state or federal list of historic resources. The property owner, Travis Thompson, requests a phased exterior alteration of 2 of these residential structures on the site. Again, those addresses are 2920 and 2922 Bedford Avenue. The first phase consists of and involves the 2922 Bedford Avenue residence. The proposal is to replace the existing porch decking with redwood decking, replace the cedar porch post with a turnstile porch post, replace the front door with a fiberglass door with oak texture. Gridded slider window along the north elevation would be replaced with a single hung vinyl window in a modified opening. Replacement of mismatched siding along all exterior elevations of this structure with a shiplap hardyboard siding or hardboard siding. Also, the applicant requests the addition of a porch roof gable to the front elevation of the home facing Bedford Avenue, as well as adding wood shutters to all windows on this residential structure. Phase 2 involves 2920 Bedford, as I mentioned, the residence and garage structure. The proposed modifications include replacing mismatched siding along all elevations, again with the shiplap hardboard siding that is proposed for the main dwelling at 2922. Slider window with single hung vinyl window would be replaced in a modified opening. Hinge garage doors would be or are proposed for the 3-panel with 3-panel steel doors on the site. The addition of a new single hung vinyl window in its former opening, as shown on the elevations provided by the applicant. The applicant would also add new shutters to the replaced window, the existing double window, and the proposed new window. The applicant also proposes the addition of a pergola over the garage door openings, as shown in their submittal package, as well as a new covered entry roof gable to that structure. The request before you is because the modifications proposed are visible from the street, and this site, as I mentioned, is located within a residential historic district, so the request before you requires site plan review. So before a building permit can be issued, the elevations need to be approved and the materials proposed need to be approved by the Planning Commission before a building permit can be issued. Staff evaluated the request under the city's design criteria and have found that the alterations would be an enhancement consistent with the general plan community design element, goal, and policies regarding visual quality and neighborhood compatibility. The request also appears to be generally consistent with the zoning ordinance as well as the development guide, in that the materials used resemble in appearance those that are to be replaced. Features added and materials proposed for their construction appear compatible with historic materials, both in this particular historic neighborhood and in others within the city. And the alterations further appear to complement the building as well as the surrounding historic district. In that the request consists of minor changes to an existing residential structure that is not listed on the city, state, or federal historic resource inventories, the request is categorically exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act per section 15301. The city did receive one public comment during our public notice and circulation of materials, and that letter from a neighbor, Mrs. Lisa Morgan, is in your packet. Mrs. Morgan's comments do not address the specific alterations by Mr. Thompson, but the public hearing process for projects like this within a historic district. Staff believes and recommends that the commission make the findings on page 9 of staff's report, then conditionally approve the request subject to the conditions provided on page 10, or as modified by you tonight by the commission. The commission, as I reminded in the previous item, may be appealed within 10 calendar days of rendering a decision. Mr. Chairman, the applicant and property owner is in the audience tonight, and that concludes my staff report.
Thank you. Any questions of staff before we open the public hearing? I had one. There's a lengthy description of phase 1 and phase 2, and maybe I overlooked it, but is there any timing related to the phasing?
No, it's a good question. The phasing that would be permitted under our code, as staff would interpret it, a typical site plan review by code is permitted an 18-month window, pardon the pun, to obtain the permit issued by or based on the elevations, materials, textures, colors, etc., approved by this body. So the applicant would have 18 months in which to complete the first phase. Upon successful completion of that first phase, staff's interpretation of the code would allow the applicant, again, upon completion of the first phase, 18 additional months to obtain a permit for phase 2.
Thank you.
This allows the applicant a little bit more time in which to do the quite expansive amount of work that's going to be done on the site for the 2 structures.
All right, thank you. Any other questions of staff? All right, we'll go ahead and open the public hearing, and hopefully there's an agent or the owner here.
Good evening. I'm Travis Thompson, property owner. I recently purchased the property this summer. It's been a property that's been in rather bad disrepair and definitely needs some love and upkeep. I'm attempting to restore it back to a quality in which it will fit in with the neighborhood and hopefully bring up the property values of the entire neighborhood, as well as be aesthetically pleasing to everyone, with consideration of appropriate historical building materials and means. I do have some examples of my colors, should you like to look at those. And I do have a small change in proposal for my front door. Thank you. I have done a little bit of research more since I've put this proposal in, found a beautiful mahogany door that is actual wood instead of fiberglass. I feel that this is more historically fitting as well as a nicer aesthetic door. I think staff has summarized my project quite well and seems to be in approval of it. So if there's any further questions or anything you'd like to ask.
Anybody have any questions of the applicant?
I just want to say thank you for a very well put together proposal.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'd like to echo that sentiment. It's unfortunately, it's not often that for single-family kinds of projects that we get a submittal like this where somebody's really done their homework, really paid attention to the requirements and what we're asking for, and given us enough information to easily make decisions. And it only took about 15 seconds standing on the street in front of your project going, yep, this is going to be good. So thank you for taking the requirements seriously. And there are endless discussions we can go through over vinyl versus wood in historic districts and that sort of thing. But I think you made some very nice design choices.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else wishing to address this project?
My name is Van Thompson. I'm Travis's father. Just one quick comment. I've been a building contractor for the last 40 years, and helping my son do this project has given me great joy and my wife great joy. But the most important thing is there's always a lot of negativity goes towards staff. And I would like to say this gentleman here, Andrew, has been more than helpful, helped my son put this project together and the packet that you gentlemen have received today. And I thank Andrew for that.
All right, thank you very much for those good words. Anyone else?
Good evening, Michael Drowish, Placerville. The project packet is excellent, well designed for just a residential. And going back to a recent discussion of should we or should we not require full-blown architects and professionals to design and submit these projects, prime example, average person can do it. So just thinking, let the average guy design his project. Thanks.
Anyone else? All right, we'll close the public hearing and bring it back to the Planning Commission for discussion of possible action. Thank you.
I make a motion that we approve as recommended on pages 9 and 10 of item, or, yeah, 9 and 10 of item number 5.2.
The second.
Any discussion? The discussion I would offer in response to the public comment a minute ago, I'm not pretending to practice law, but my understanding is the California Building Code and other state laws and the Business and Profession Code, et cetera, have actually gone to great lengths to make sure that for certain types of projects, including residential projects, that the regular citizen can do that project, do residential projects in most situations, without needing design professionals and that sort of thing. And this is the reason why, because regular folks can do this stuff if they pay attention to the rules. And so I commend the applicant for his submittal. Any other discussion? Okay, I'll call the question with a roll call vote, please.
Member List?
Aye.
Member Lowry?
Aye.
Chair Wolf?
Aye.
Vice Chair Roby?
Aye.
Okay, galloping along here, we'll move to item 5.3, which is described as the 2013-21 housing element implementation, which involves a general plan amendment cited 16-02, a zone change 16-03, and an amendment to the Ridge at Orchard Hill Plan Development Overlay cited as 03-01. Basically, for the benefit of the public here tonight, this is a request by the city of Placerville City Council that the Planning Commission conduct a public hearing to consider making recommendation to the City Council regarding the, to a packet of recommendations here that would partially implement the high-density development requirements which the city has not met as part of our 2013-2021 housing element. And this is testable material. I'll count that. And a staff report, please.
Yeah, the city's housing element, the most recent version of it, which is Cycle 5, was adopted in February of 2014. As part of the state housing law update process, the city was allocated by the Sacramento Area Council of Governments a share of new Sacramento region housing units across several income household levels that were identified as needed to accommodate future population growth, both in the Sacramento area as well as our local jurisdiction here at the city. This allocation of units, residential units, needs to be allocated for the full length of the planning period of this housing element, which again runs from 2013 to 2021. This regional share is called the Regional Housing Needs Allocation. And under state law, the city is not required to have the housing built for the various income levels, only provide the opportunity through regulations and zoning provisions to have it built or have the ability to have it built during that housing element planning period. As provided in the housing element itself, the city has adequate land zone to accommodate housing for moderate and above moderate income levels. However, the city has a deficient inventory of land available to accommodate its share of lower income households. Under state housing law, a minimum density of 20 dwelling units per acre is deemed affordable for the creation of housing to serve lower income households. As a result, Program 3, which is called the Unmet Housing Need of the Housing Element, was incorporated into and adopted by City Council that compels the city to rezone land at a 20 dwelling unit per acre minimum density to meet its unmet lower income household need. The city has two unmet need figures that it must address during this housing element cycle. One is a leftover or carryover, from the previous cycle, the 2008 to 2013, the fourth cycle. There was 106 units that the city had not provided an inventory for, and those need to be addressed soon, if not tomorrow, but they need to be done soon. This particular request tonight will assist the city in partially implementing that particular carryover of units. Also, there is an additional 133 units that must be rezoned and accommodated for to account for our unmet need during this cycle, the fifth cycle. The request before the commission tonight is for its recommendation to City Council that would initiate, as Chair Wolf mentioned, the partial implementation of Program 3 under this particular housing element, which is 2013 to 2021. Adding to these documents would be references to a new land use designation, the housing opportunity overlay, along with the newly adopted Housing Opportunity Overlay District. The new Housing Opportunity Overlay land use designation would have a density range of 20 to 24 dwelling units per acre, consistent with the Housing Opportunity Overlay Zone, which was recently adopted by Council. The request would also change the city's inventory of land with the potential for rezoning to meet the city's regional housing need allocation of unmet need for lower income households. This inventory is shown on Table 40 and Appendix E of the housing element. A new site would be added to this inventory. It is numbered Site 11. This site consists of two vacant parcels totaling 7.6 acres. They are located at the northeast corner of the intersection of Placerville Drive and Cold Springs Road. They are both zoned commercial. Site 1 of this inventory, again on Table 40 and Appendix E, would also be amended. An additional 2-acre parcel would be added to the 4-acre parcel already inventoried and already on that inventory. The total acreage would be 1.6 acres of land, and these acres and these two parcels are located in what's called the Rigid Orchard Hill Plan Development. And it is the subject, land subject to the proposed city-initiated amendments to the general plan, land use map, the zoning map, and I'll discuss in a few minutes the amendment to the plan development for the Rigid Orchard Hill. The new land use designation for these parcels would be high-density residential housing opportunity overlay. The new zoning for these parcels would be R3, which is the current zone, multifamily, PD, plan development, as well as housing opportunity overlay. Tonight's request also involves an amendment, as I mentioned, to the Rigid Orchard Hill plan development. The amendment would authorize the provisions of this housing opportunity overlay zone to the two parcels that the city's inventoried that were previously mentioned. The overlay zone would allow development on the parcels either in the manner provided under the ordinance or the manner provided under the current plan development base zoning that this property has, but not both. Any future development of multifamily units on these two parcels would be required to comply with the mitigation measures and conditions of approval for the Rigid Orchard Hill plan development previously approved by the city. Multifamily design and building elevations would also be required to be substantially consistent with the 2003 approved multifamily unit elevations during the original plan development approval. We did provide those elevations. We have them here should the commission wish to see them. Staff's report provides the history of the plan development. I won't go into it due to lack of time and additional items on tonight's agenda, but it is a residential project. It has changed a little bit over time as shown in staff's report. Staff's report also analyzes the comparison between the proposed housing opportunity overlay option and the approved plan development uses. Due to the current state of the 6 acres of land in the plan development, with approximately 1/2 of the acreage containing 2-to-1 engineered slopes, and these slopes were engineered to develop the site as proposed under the plan development. Lost my place here. Due to the engineered slope, approximately half of the lot, or half of the 6 acres total, are encumbered by that 2-to-1 slope, really limiting the realistic density on this site to 3 acres, or approximately 3 acres. These 3 acres, based on the maximum zoning under the HO, or housing opportunity overlay, at 24 dwelling units per acre, 3 times 24, the realistic number of units on this site staff estimates to be 72. The potential housing opportunity overlay of 72 units, if developed on the subject site, when combined with the current uses being developed within the, if you've been up there, there's an existing subdivision of 53 lots that are being built out as we speak, as well as 80 townhouses which were approved under the PD but have not been constructed yet, and those were to be constructed on the large vacant lot, not the 6 acres here, but approximately a 14-acre piece that adjoins these 2 lots, and also within the plan development. Those 80 units combined with 72 with the housing opportunity overlay and the 53 of the existing subdivision, those total 205 units. Now this is 50 units shorter, or 50 units fewer, not shorter, but fewer than under the 255 that were approved under the plan development. So once again, I'll reiterate, 50 fewer lots would have the potential to be built based on provisions under the current plan development on the vacant lot, not encumbered by the request for rezoning and general plan designation. So again, there's 50 units fewer. Staff has prepared an addendum to the mitigative negative declaration that was adopted by the city back in 2003. The addendum describes the housing element opportunity overlay and its application to the project area as well as the vicinity. That's Exhibit D. It evaluates the changes to the project that have occurred since the M&D was approved in December 2003. That's Exhibit E. E as in Edward. The addendum determined that the application of the Housing Opportunity Overlay Zone would not create any new or significant environmental impacts that were not already evaluated under the MND of record, and would not increase the severity of any previously identified significant impacts. To conclude, no public comments have been received during this city-initiated request. The text and map amendments proposed help to partially implement Program 3, one of the programs identified by Council as high priority. And the general plan amendments proposed lie within the land use element and the housing element. Their enactment would further the goals and policies established within the city's housing element and bring internal consistency between the general plan, housing element and the land use element. Staff requests that the commission tonight recommend to City Council make the findings A through C as provided on page 13 regarding the approval of the addendum to the Rigid Orchard Hill Plan Development Mitigated Negative Declaration. Make the findings under Roman numerals 2 and 3, also on page 13 of staff's report, regarding the general plan amendment 16-02 and zoning ordinance 16-03, and adopt the addendum, the general plan amendment, and the zone change, as well as the amendment to the Rigid Orchard Hill Plan Development as provided on pages 14 and 15 of staff's report. One other note as I conclude here, it is staff's intention to schedule this city-initiated request for council consideration and action at their regular meeting on October the 25th. Mr. Chairman, that concludes my staff report.
Thank you. Obviously a lot of work, a lot of things to sift through. I was curious about, has there been any staff contact with the, particularly the two parcels involved as part of the Rigid Orchard Hill plan development? Has there been communication from those owners?
Yes, there has been communication between staff and the representative of the property, which is a Suncrest Bank. And I believe that gentleman is in the audience tonight.
Right.
I would imagine he will have probably something to provide.
Thank you. Any other questions of staff? All right, we'll go ahead. Oh, go ahead.
I guess I'm saying I want this in the record, but what's the downside if we would not approve this?
Currently, the city's housing element has been found not in compliance with state planning law and housing law. So we have until February, and Mr. Painter can give me a more exact date, but I believe it's in February, where the city needs to find an inventory of suitable parcels to accommodate the ability to construct affordable housing units, apartments, if you will. And so this was a site that we felt, one of those sites that could, let's just say, provide for some of our arena numbers. And so the downside, again, we would remain not in compliant with state housing law, and therefore the city could find itself with an inability to apply for certain state grants and funding where a certified housing element is required.
Government by blackmail.
One thing, if I may, Mr. Chairman, I just want to add that, again, I allowed Mr. Painter for actually doing the research, and he found this ability to create what we're calling a housing opportunity overlay, as opposed to what we originally had conceived was the R5 residential multifamily zoning district, which would be a base zone district, meaning that if we applied the R5 to a piece of property, then that property could only develop at 20 units per acre, or up to 24 units per acre. Where here, the property owner then has an ability to develop their property under the base zone district. In this particular case, the ability to develop the property under the existing Rigid Orchard Hill plan development is preserved. But should the property owner, say, come across some additional funding, maybe some future funding by either state or federal grant money to build affordable housing, well, then this property could provide for the opportunity to construct that. And so with the HO overlay, the property owner, we would say from staff's perspective, the value of the property is enhanced rather than degraded. If you recall, in previous hearings, we had a situation where maybe a property owner could make a challenge of inverse condemnation if the property is found to be undevelopable from a market standpoint. I don't know how successful that would be in court, but it was an uphill battle to convince a property owner of, well, we're going to do this to your property. You can only build 20 units per acre or up to 24, as opposed to, in this particular case now, the property owner has an option. It enhances an ability or an option to build rather than that's the only option.
Thank you. Anybody else? All right, let's go ahead and open the public hearing on this item.
Very quickly, Michael Cook, Hefner, Starkham Roy. My client is the owner of the 6.6 acres, the two parcels, and we really don't have any comment at this point. We were here in 2014, not too thrilled to be included in the blackmail, as you referred to it, from the state down to the locals, and we ended up with 4.4 acres of our 20 acres or so site included. As Mr. Rivas said, with an R5 designation, we view what your staff has come up with as an improvement. You're encumbering another 2.2 acres, but you're providing flexibility as to the entire 6.6, as opposed to what we believed was kind of a tough situation as to the 4.4. So we think this is an improved situation for us and still achieves the city's goals. So we're very appreciative of the fact that the city has proceeded in this fashion. And in terms of communication, Mr. Driscoll, Mr. Rivas, and Mr. Painter have all recognized, my client is a bank who got this property back in foreclosure. We need flexibility. We need marketability. They've been, I think, very accommodating to us. We didn't get what we wanted in 2014, but I think they've kept our concerns in mind, and they've certainly communicated with us at the outset of their planning and through the stages up through tonight, and we appreciate that.
Thank you. Any questions of the agent? Anyone else? I see some quizzled looks.
We're from the Orchard Hill subdivision directly across the street. My name is Sharon Petrowski. I'm one of the homeowners that originally built in that subdivision. We came into the meeting tonight to find out what this letter was about. Most of the letter and communications that we have received have a lot of legal jargon in it, and I'm no lawyer, so I can't read that and decipher what it means. What I'm understanding is that you want to rezone the property so that you can build apartment complexes across the street from the subdivision. How's that going to affect the property value for the Orchard Hill homeowners? Has that been considered?
Staff does not analyze an impact on property values with the project.
In addition to the traffic that's already pretty much out of control, people speeding up and down that hill, it's become quite dangerous. It's a pretty big impact. So I would hope that the council would take that into consideration.
All right, thank you. Anyone else?
Well, my name's Judy Sharp, and I live in the Orchard Hill subdivision. And it was to our knowledge, I mean, we haven't heard anything about what was going on next across the street. We see for sale signs changing constantly, rezoning, and the houses stopped back in, I can't remember what year. But if I can remember correctly, they weren't going to put low-income apartments in there, that it was going to be zoned for maybe moderate to low-income family houses. Our concern is to have apartments. It's created a mess on Clay Street with having the lower income apartments put over next to the to the homes up there. They put the Cottonwood apartments, and it has changed their property value and the traffic, and just everything has changed up there for the homeowners. And I see that being the same as with ours. We're lower income, but we try to keep it would just get worse with a lower income apartment complex put over across the street. I think once they thought about putting like a eschaton over there, and I think the homeowners were in agreement with that, but we don't know what happened with that either. But we really don't know what's going on tonight, so we came to find out because we really would like you to consider our property value of low-income apartments being put over there. And it's already going to have a lot of issues with Boys and Girls Club put on the corner as far as traffic and us getting in and out of Mallard Drive. But I would like to see it kept as a home, not apartment living across the street from my house. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Michael?
Yes, I want to give kudos to Mr. Painter for coming up with this overlay zone. Excellent job. Staff gets a lot of flack sometimes. He nailed it here. This is great. Just a question on this proposed draft addendum to the mitigated negative declaration. It says draft on it, so does that mean that it'll be publicly noticed for official public comment, or are we in that period, and is this addendum being adopted tonight? Thank you.
I think I can answer that. We're just making a recommendation to the city council. It would still be re-noticed. Correct me if I'm wrong from the staff, but it would still be re-noticed. There'd be another round of public comment.
Yeah, at the council level, that's true, yes. So these are all draft until council's consideration. So they are draft ordinance. There's a draft ordinance in your packet, a draft resolution for potential consideration or modification by council. So including the addendum, yes. So they are draft documents until they get up to the council level, and then if adopted, then they're no longer draft. They actually become, with lack of a better word, final or approved or adopted.
Thank you. Anyone else in terms of public comment? Mr. Smith.
I didn't see the notice that's referred to by a couple of the residents, but I just wanted to let you know I've heard those same kind of issues raised a number of times before this body and before the city council over a number of years. The quality of notice and whether it really puts people on notice as to what these hearings are about and what they can do. Again, I haven't seen the notice, but she said it was legally used and it's not spelled out. I know in my own experience, I was here 6 years ago on a pole sign, and it was given out, the notice, to about 80 different properties. They did not spell out the procedures for what you present to the city council. When I said you have an opportunity to present to the city council, it's a horrible notice, because it tells you that you've got an illegal sign, that's the conclusion, and then tells you you can bring it up before the city council, but doesn't spell out what your rights are. And so that's just an issue to present to you, that there could be some uniformity to ensure that people get notice. I remember when we talked about that big plan you came up with, and we worked really hard over years to come up with the city plan, and then someone pointed out you come here and you'd have a lot of people come up from the public. The notices that go to the downtown business association sometimes were just indecipherable. They were not written in a way that the average member of the public or business persons even would know how it affected them. So I do think that some attention needs to be directed to the kind of issues that you raised. That's all. I can't be more specific because I didn't see this one.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing, bring it back to the commission for discussion and possible action. Any other discussion or questions of staff? I have a question and clarification from staff. I can't quite go through 5/8 of an inch of this stuff and find it, but what's the, can you help us on what the existing zoning is for these two parcels in question, 06 and 08?
Existing zoning is R3 plan development, and I'll tell you what the full name of that is. The R3 is medium density multifamily residential, and the PD or plan development is just what it sounds. This project or this site went through a plan development process. It first involved the Planning Commission, and then subsequently went to the City Council in an association with tentative maps, site plan review for uses that are no longer proposed. One was referenced earlier about a care facility or something very similar to that. Apartments were also proposed originally. Does that address your question?
Yes, it does. And then just to kind of follow on that thought, am I correct to understand that these property owners will have the option of, they could still develop it as these two parcels as medium density R3 planned unit development, or in keeping with the housing overlay?
I described this in the staff report. The plan development as it currently exists on the roughly 6 acres that are before you tonight for rezoning and redesignation. There were 2 types of housing development that was proposed on these lots. And I'm not talking about the 53 lot subdivision that you're seeing in construction right now. But there was a townhouse component, and I referenced that earlier, 80 units earlier. 84 was actually the total, but 4 of the units are on, 80 are on one lot, one of these 2 lots, and 4 are on the other. The other component that was proposed was single family lot detached houses on 19 lots. So that's what the plan development would permit as far as construction today, provided submitting of plans and approval and meeting conditions and mitigation measures, et cetera. God, I'm sorry, my long-winded answer and the lateness of I'm trying to get back to the question. I'm sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah, just what would be the bonehead simple explanation here for the maximum number of units under this overlay?
With the overlay, there would be 72 from staff's estimation based on a realistic, due to the site constraints, as I mentioned, the 2-to-1 engineered slope. The 80 units of townhouses, again, the component that has not been constructed yet. And again, you have to remember the plan development included the land that is now the 53 lot subdivision. And because it's a plan development, all those things were intertwined with the original approval. So I think I'm getting to your question. The number of units under this overlay was 205, and 255 were approved for the plan development today. I'm not today, but in the past by City Council. So that's why I referenced earlier about the number of units fewer that this overlay would generate. Granted, the housing type is different. That's without question. As I mentioned earlier, the plan development calls for townhouses, fee simple, which means they could be purchased individually. And then the other component is single family detached on 19 lots. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because it seems to me that, to address the concerns of the adjacent neighbors, one of the ways this plays out is there's 19 single family homes across the street. I'm oversimplifying.
Right, and 80 townhouses.
And under current zoning, what's allowable today, subject to a project review and approval, there could be as many as 255 units in various flavors, as opposed to in the housing overlay where it's 205. All right, thank you. Any questions? Well, I know this is, the city has been coming to this for a long time to try to get this housing element in order. And so I hope I can get the numbers right here. I move to approve the findings and actions on page 13 of the staff report and adopt recommendations on page 14 and 15 of the staff report. The effect of this motion will be to approve the establishment of the housing overlay zone and add the housing overlay zone to the city zoning ordinance. And 2 existing parcels will be required to meet the requirements of the housing overlay zone.
Second.
Discussion?
I'm sorry, who made the second? Thank you.
Roll call vote, please.
Chair Wolf?
Aye.
Vice Chair Roby?
Aye.
Member List?
No.
Member Lowry?
Aye.
Okay, we'll move on to item 5.4, the item that several people have waited patiently for. This is a request by the City of Placerville that the Planning Commission conduct a hearing to consider and make recommendations to the City Council regarding proposed amendments to the city zoning code to allow and regulate outdoor sidewalk dining and the public right-of-way.
Thank you, Mr.
Staff
Chairman,
report.
members of the Planning Commission. Just to get a little background, currently restaurant businesses and cafes located on Main Street have placed tables and chairs and have installed fence enclosures within the sidewalk area in front of their business establishments for use by their customers. Over the past couple of years, staff has received some complaints regarding these encroachments, and also staff has received inquiries about the allowance for sidewalk dining and encroachments onto the public sidewalk. The city currently does not allow for these sidewalk encroachment uses, and the existing ones are operating without encroachment permits or any permitting whatsoever from the city. The City Council initiated amendments to the Placerville zoning ordinance by a resolution of intention to permit the processing of this code change to consider regulating sidewalk dining. The Planning Commission held a public workshop, and this is back in September 15th of last year, if you recall, and discussed at that time both outdoor sidewalk dining and parklets. Topics discussed included development standards, optional standards, standards for outdoor display, signage, and application process. Following the discussion of the parklets, the Commission confined the process to consider outdoor dining only and deferred any consideration of parklets to be done separately. Therefore, parklets are not a part of this draft ordinance. It is the opinion of staff that allowing for the ability to encroach onto city sidewalks and potentially city streets with outdoor dining areas would have a beneficial and positive impact on the experience of tourists, visitors, and residents alike. The process to amend the city code involves staff drafting the proposed regulations, which would be incorporated into the zoning ordinance and allow for the review of by the city of any proposed outdoor dining areas within city sidewalks under a site plan review process. Staff is proposing to include minimum performance standards that must be met as a minimum sidewalk width to maintain adequate path of travel, ADA accessibility, and clearances. Other development standards may include durability and design of fence enclosures, the type and material of all furnishing, such as chairs, tables, etc. Staff is suggesting that the council consider public input following deliberation and provide staff with any direction for modification to the draft ordinance that is provided. Staff would bring back to the commission a final draft ordinance for consideration. And I say that so that you don't feel pressured that if you've reviewed the draft ordinance and you have a lot of questions or maybe want to see some changes, you can give us direction. And this would be similar to how you handled the chicken ordinance. We actually had the ordinance before you twice, so that staff took direction from both the commission and the public, and then came back with a final draft for your consideration. And you would be making a recommendation to the city council. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions that you have regarding the draft ordinance that is shown in your Exhibit A.
All right, any questions of staff? Okay, we'll open the public hearing on this item.
Good evening again. Since this is a recommendation to council on how to structure this ordinance, I like the concept of creating these dining areas, as long as we're not encroaching in the sidewalk and creating a hazard. So just a question on allowing commercial display. I'm assuming that's items for sale. I believe the city enforced a private property action that was going on a private parking lot, and I believe the city code says something about as long as there's not a price tag on the item, it can be outside, but with a price tag outside, even on private property, it's a violation of code. So I'd like clarification on that. I'd like to potentially address head clearance, state a minimum head clearance for any kind of umbrella, what have you. And then as you measure the 5 feet of clearance, I'd like it to specify and be clearer on, is it measured from the outside face of any furniture or display item to back of curb, front of curb, any other obstruction, light pole, trash can, etc. Just make it a little clearer. Also maybe address that some people, like the pizza place has a kind of a permanent heavy fence. Just a clause in there that they shall not place any such item over a city access point to a utility, like a meter cover or anything like that. I'd like to see that once a permit is granted under site plan review, that the city engineer or the director, somebody, determines where the outside face of such a display area is, and require a 1-inch striped line on the sidewalk to be maintained, to delineate a space that shall not be encroached. Because if it's just a couple tables and chairs and then a big gathering occurs, all of a sudden some more chairs are pulled outside, there needs to be a line there where code enforcement can come back and say, you got to get back behind that line.
So could you run through that again?
I would like to see it. So each site is going to be specific, given width and barriers to light poles, trash cans, etc. So once a permit is granted, I would like to see the city engineer, the director, somebody say, right here, that's your line. Don't go past it with any of your material. And have it painted on the sidewalk, just a little stripe. So there's no ambiguity over where that line is. Somebody doesn't have to go get their tape measure and say, you're in violation.
So what I would offer with regard to if we do choose to go with a painted line, and whenever I hear that, I always reminded of the blue line that goes up Orange Grove Avenue and then all the way down Colorado Boulevard and up Sierra Madre Boulevard. It's a maintenance issue for the city of Pasadena. So I would say that the placement and maintenance of any such stripe be at the responsibility and expense of
the permittee. Yeah, exactly. Put it on the permittee. And then if this is going to be a site plan review item, when they go forward for permit request, what kind of then triggers would there be for review of impacts to historical districts and or resources? Any alterations to the exterior of a building within 300 feet of a historic district or resource gets planning commission review already. So just, I'd like to see a special note on there, because mostly this ordinance is going to be downtown, right here, Main Street. It's not the other districts in the city.
So, Michael, so I understand, are you talking about the appearance of the furniture and fencing?
Appropriateness to visual impact of a potential historic district and or resource.
So no Jetsons furniture downtown?
And then I'd kind of like to see F1B mentions no more than, there's a trigger at 4 tables and 8 chairs. I think it'd be a little more appropriate, given some of the smaller storefronts down there, that there's a trigger at 2 tables and 4 chairs. With the rest of the language in there, as the director may deem a variance. And I'd also include the director or planning commission, because if it's a site plan review, you'll be able to alter the conditions per site constraint. So just some ideas there to think about. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Doug Roca. I'm a local attorney. My office is here in Placerville, and I've lived here for many years. I live here in Placerville as well. And I've been an advocate of outdoor dining in this town for probably 20 years, 30 years, and nothing has happened. And it's something that is evolving, throughout the country. And you see it in the news all the time, and lots of places are opening in Sacramento, lots of places in San Francisco, and yes, they're bigger cities, and but I was in Paris 10 years ago and walking around, and I had Placerville in mind because there's all this outdoor dining. They're out on the street, and the sidewalks are crowded. People are walking everywhere and enjoying it. And I took pictures of sidewalks where they actually took streets and built the sidewalk out into the street and cut a lane out. Now, no one's proposing that occur here, but it creates an ambiance and an atmosphere that people want to come to, and they want to get out there. And so Placerville is sitting geographically in an amazing spot, and it's boggled my mind that downtown has not taken advantage of that. I mean, you've got people going up year-round, in particular in the summer, going to Tahoe, coming down Apple Hill. And if this beautiful summertime evenings where people could sit outside and eat downtown, they would do it. But the restrictions are so tight and so impossible. I mean, you've got the Independent that built this little box because that's what they were allowed. And you have Jack Russell, which actually did a nice job building an outdoor space, but up against the freeway, where people want to come and enjoy the environment and sit outside and have a bottle of wine and talk with their friends is downtown. Now, the ordinance that's proposed is a great step, but it's a baby step. I mean, you're nibbling at the edges, and I read it and I'm thinking of these little tables crammed up against the side of the building, and you're going to get 3 or 4 or 5 people out there, kind of like what they had to do, which is so unfortunate, over at Olay in Diamond Springs. And I don't know if any of you have eaten there, but it's a great restaurant and a really well done project. But they were given this little tiny space for the outdoor dining. It's kind of silly. So I note that the idea of the parklets was pulled, and I'm not sure why, but that's obviously, to me, a step in the right direction. And I think you folks need to think a little more boldly. And I think you ought to turn the staff loose, come up with some ideas, because the revenue that it would generate for the city of Placerville, and it could create a bloody renaissance down there. The restaurants are really good, and if you could get people to be excited about stopping and bringing in outside dollars into this town, and I think outdoor dining is the ticket to do that. People don't like change, and they get upset, and every time you mention something that's going to take a parking spot, everyone gets all excited. But, you know, people find places to park. When you want to go to a good restaurant, you will park. There is parking. You might not park right in front of the bloody restaurant, which is what people seem to think they are entitled to do, but people will find parking. The restaurants and antique stores and commercial shops downtown will get a lot more business if you've got people walking up and down the street enjoying restaurants and keeping businesses open later into the evening, because in Placerville, the place shuts down at 8 o'clock because, you know, it just quiets down. Whereas if there were an outdoor environment, I think it'd be turned, you know, Placerville as a diamond into a, they'll chip it up and make it a good, well-shaped diamond. Anyway, I would urge you to, you know, take a harder look at this and see if you can broaden the scope of, you know, what I saw as a pretty limited little nibble at the edges of outdoor dining, and really take a stab at it and see if we can turn it into something that the restaurants are going to really be excited about. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, last call. I'm going to tell you two things, if I may. The first is, it scares me because I don't like the this ambiguous kind of structure going out and regulating things, because it hasn't been well received. So it scares me what it can do. What we know about the history is Benny's Pizza gets permission to put it up, and then some people complain. Benny's is unique. It used to be Max Jumbo's decades ago, and the way it's constructed, it has a way to accommodate that outdoor dining. Across the street, what's now called the Public House, or was It's Personal. The way it's constructed, you can have outdoor dining, albeit not out onto the sidewalk. Our sidewalks are very narrow. But to your east, you've got several businesses in a row that have outdoor dining facing the street. The bagel place, the Czechoslovakian restaurant, Melter's, and the restaurant for Sweetie Pies. If she chose to be open at night, you have that possibility. But downstairs, downtown, you really don't have that much space. It's very narrow. And then you come up with little problems, like there's one place that has a table for two, and it's often used for people who smoke. Do you have any rules about that? I don't like smoking, so I just don't bother. I just walk out in the street. So where else are you going to have parking, public dining? Where do you have the space? Well, the city's nicely accommodated the coffee shop right there at the bell tower by doubling the size of their sidewalk. I'd be surprised if they didn't ask for it. But I'm scared about this city regulating things. Lastly, let me use that occasion to describe the fears and suggest, Mr. Wolf, I'm sorry if you take anything, any of you, what I or others said before personally. I'm not known for being bashful. If I did not respect you, trust me, I would say it. I've said the opposite. I don't want your job. It's a tough, thankless thing. I think I've singled out Mr. Lent because I never know what he's going to decide, but I always love hearing him because he just gives thoughtful reasons. You have nothing to do with who decides. You don't decide what cases go before you. So if you want to defend, or oppose conspiracy theories or defend even prosecution, go ahead. But it's not, no one said that you do things selectively, have they? No. So I know that with my sign, you had people here, Albert Fausel, the Fausels had a sign. They had the president of Western Sign Company come and explain why it didn't have to be torn down. It cost the Fausels $9,000 to replace it with what the city did, and it would have been cheaper to do that than litigate. And for me, it was 6 years over a pole sign. 6 years, and then when did it change? When I wanted to test their idea that they treat everybody equally. So he said, what about that Thomas property down there? That's an abandoned sign. And I'm told, in this room, Mr. Smith, you were right. You were right all along. That is a property that is between tenants.
Well, Mr.
So,
Smith, what does this have to do with the outdoor dining?
what it has to do with this is, now you know why I and a lot of business people in the community are scared, suspicious and scared of the city having this kind of regulatory authority because of how it gets used in arbitrary ways. And by the way, as somebody who actually has property on Main Street and works with merchants on Main Street, one of the things we asked for is increased street lighting. And when we came here to about 5 workshops on that subject, merchants kept telling them we want greater streetlights, which would help to bring people on Main Street, as our colleague said. And what we were told is, we'll look at it. And finally, we didn't know until after the whole process was over, we finally find out in the city council room, the reason they never put in lighting, because the lights are paid for by PG&E, they pay for electricity, and they're not gonna do it, so it costs the city money. It took 9 months to find that out, because we didn't get straight answers in this room. That would have helped us for promoting businesses to have greater lighting. So what you heard in this room is just the canary in the coal mine. Merchants don't go out and are not very vocal, because that's the rule in business. You don't talk politics or religion, but they're not happy, and they're very distrustful of the city and the way they administer the ordinances they already have.
Well, let me ask you this: do you think, to kind of bring this, to get this to roost back on the subject at hand, what is your opinion of the opinion of downtown merchants on this ordinance proposed?
Nobody's asked them, by the way. So to be fair, I'd have to poll them. But I think that you have a mixed bag. And frankly, I do think that should be done more often, is poll them. It's not hard. You just go to every 10th business. You don't have to ask for people to return a response to a questionnaire. Just knock on doors. And I've done that on instances. But in this one, it's a mixed bag. Merchants want more activity. There's a lot of things that's harming them that are often beyond their control. One is we don't have enough parking. Second is the electronic commerce. People can go to Amazon.com, buy books off the internet, so it affects the way merchants operate. But you have a chance for outdoor dining already. And if people right next door could open up at night, the Czechoslovakian place is open, Meltzer's could be open, Sweetie Pies could be open. Right now, Public House does pretty well because they have access. But it just turned out that this came about because they gave her permit, let them get away with it at Benny's. A lot of people weren't happy because they thought it was disparity of treatment, and that's where the complaints came from. But frankly, that property is unique. Where else are you going to have that kind of sidewalk space? But Max Jumbo's design allowed it to happen. So I'm just telling you that there's fear about what happens when the regulatory structure runs out there. And that's why there's suspicion.
All right, thank you.
I would be much more articulate, frankly, if I thought that this could get anywhere and if any of you had the power to do anything about that. But thank you.
All right, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing, bring this back to the commission for discussion, possible action. Questions of staff or any comments?
I have a question of staff. Just so I understand, when things like this proposed regulation of outdoor dining, it gets posted to the city website some number of days before the public hearing, is that correct?
If the commission would recall, staff actually had received criticism that the package was available to the public and probably to commissioners as well too soon before your hearing, so that you didn't have enough time to review it. And so, and I'll let Mr. Painter maybe can get in a little more of the details, but we actually advertise the agenda package, and we advertise for these items, I believe, a full, sometimes 3 weeks in advance. So to afford both the public and the commissioners, everyone that would be interested, would have then an ability to fully review what's before you tonight.
Okay,
So
so
in other
from-
words, this was advertised back in August. I believe this was sent to the paper back on August the 20th. It was published in the paper in the Mountain Democrat on August 26th. And so it's interesting when we still get comments that people haven't had a chance to look at it and such, because that was staff's response to some criticism we received from the public quite some time ago. And you know, staff agreed maybe we can adjust how we schedule things to allow more time. And so there was definitely ample time for people to review this. But as I said earlier in the beginning of my staff report, I don't want the commission to feel rushed. So you, back in September of last year, you held just a workshop. You didn't have a draft ordinance before you. We just had more of a discussion between the commission, staff, and the public on those two items, dining on sidewalks and the parklets. I can't recall exactly why, other than you felt that a parklet was very different than sidewalk dining, so you requested that we separate that, and that would maybe move forward in the future under its own path. So we did that, and so staff reviewed. So staff considered both all the comments received from that workshop, all the comments received from the council members. We also looked at ordinances from, I would say, probably a dozen different cities, and then we came up with this initial draft. So don't feel you have to make a recommendation to the council tonight. What we're seeking is some direction. If there's components about this you don't like, or if we're missing components, such as one of the earlier speakers, I think it was Mr. Drobish, we tried to take a lot of notes of what he had to say. There were some things that he mentioned that made sense to try and look at, add into the code to make it a little more clear. And so that's what staff is seeking.
So, you know, let me just say, I think it's a wonderful idea. I wish we could collect some metrics from how much till activity there was at these various illegal outdoor dining locations over over this past week when we had the gold panning championships and we saw all those out of state license plates. So it's not that I don't feel rushed. What piques my interest is when the statement is made is that there's not proper public notice of these things coming on, not a long enough duration of these things coming up. You know, maybe if the downtown business folks don't have time to visit the city website on a more or less regular basis, then maybe it might make sense for the PDA to consider hiring a volunteer ledge analyst to attend those meetings and say, this is what's coming up. I mean, if somebody wanted to do a service for the downtown business folks, I think that would be an admirable activity to participate in.
I will note that staff did attend the PDA meeting, and we did announce that this item would be coming before the Planning Commission, and encouraged any PDA member so interested to either come to our office and talk to us about it, or go online and they could look at the draft ordinance.
So in a nutshell, everything short of throwing a net over them. Thanks.
As you looked at other cities that have outdoor dining, what did you find in terms of the issue of smoking? Was there anything in any of those? I know that in one of the South Bay cities, they do not allow smoking in the outdoor restaurants.
That was one of the comments from a previous speaker that I wrote down, because we don't want to create a smoking grotto that would discourage customers then from accessing the particular business, and I'm sure the business owner probably wouldn't want that as well. But I don't recall seeing smoking in any of those other ordinances. I can just tell you, we looked at Pacific Grove, we looked at City of Covina, Sandpoint, Idaho, we looked at City of Sacramento, City of San Francisco, we looked at City of Traverse City, City of Davis.
So it occurs to me that is that already been handled by virtue of ordinances that don't permit smoking within 6 meters or 20.6 feet of a door opening. I mean, our building is a public building where I work, and there are signs at every door opening that you cannot smoke within this certain radius. Now, is that something that already exists in health and safety, the statewide health and safety codes, that sort of thing?
It could. Staff can say that I know that smoking is not allowed within 20 feet of a public building at a door.
Right, that's
entrance.
the thing I see.
But I don't know about restaurants, so I can't speak intelligently about it, but staff will certainly, like I say, we will look at that and see if there's something already in the books in regards to, is there some distance from the door opening of a restaurant where smoking wouldn't be permitted.
Yeah, it's a non-smoking venue. It's a restaurant's a non-smoking place. So
if it's outdoor dining, then, and again, I'm just making an assumption, but staff is making the assumption that you wouldn't be permitted to smoke, within a outdoor dining area. But we can certainly look at that, and we can probably put something like that in the code. We'll look at that.
Yeah.
All right, so if I understand this, I mean, I've heard some critical things tonight that seemed worthy of study regarding dimensional locations of these areas, price tags, head clearance for furniture and umbrellas, the relationship to the outdoor, the outdoor furniture elements to utility access, some issues about smoking. I thought it was kind of interesting, the comment about additional street lighting. I think that's probably beyond the purview of this proposed ordinance. But am I true in understanding we don't really need any action? We don't need to take any formal action tonight. I think you've heard some things that people are interested in and concerned about. And then I would suggest that any of the commissioners or the public for that matter, if you have some ideas, we know where to find you guys. We know where you park, and where you live.
Staff has taken copious notes. What staff would propose to do is when we re-agendize before you, you would then receive a version of this draft ordinance with an underlined strikeout showing the changes that were made from tonight.
Sounds good. Thank you. So we don't need to take any action here. So we'll move on to item 6, matters from planning commissioners. Anything?
Only thing is I will not be available for the scheduled meeting October 4th, I believe it is. So.
Okay. I was hesitating. I was checking my schedule. My apologies to everyone. Any comments? Matters from staff?
Yeah, staff does have a couple of things. Regarding the October 4th meeting, based on tonight's action, and I don't believe that the sidewalk dining would come back on that date. No? Okay. Then we will not hold a hearing or hold a meeting on the 4th. But we will have a meeting on the 18th, and that meeting will have 4 items on it. I could briefly describe those to you if you're interested, but due to the lateness of the day, I don't know if you do want to. But that meeting is full. We're ready to go with those. And
can we be 60 seconds interested?
Okay. Yes. There are 4 items. There is a telecommunication facility, a new cell tower proposed in the Broadway corridor. So that will be a conditional use permit, site plan review, and there's an environmental document that's currently going through the public comment stage right now. In fact, the last date for comment would be Monday, the 26th. Second item, there is a request to install an awning at the Centro Cafe. That's item number 2. You're challenging me here at the lateness of the day. What's the third or fourth item? Third item. No, that's not.
Yeah, close enough.
Okay, the sidewalk diagram will be, I thought that was
We'll
a question
probably
to
be
me.
back. Okay.
So I guess there would be five items on that. The other two, gosh, why I can't think of it at the moment. I'm sorry.
All right, that's fine.
I assume that we will be notified as well as the public in well
No,
in advance of
we
that.
will keep you in the dark.
Thank you.
And I sense a consensus for adjournment. We are adjourned. Brothers in arms, thank you.